This episode is brought to you by Honda. When you test drive the all-new Prologue EV, there's a lot that can impress you about it. There's the class-leading passenger space, the clean, thoughtful design, and the intuitive technology. But out of everything, what you'll really love most is that it's a Honda. Visit honda.com/EV to see offers.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
This episode is brought to you by Microsoft Azure. Turn your ideas into reality with an Azure free account. Get everything you need to develop apps across cloud and hybrid environments, scale workloads, create cloud-connected mobile experiences, and so much more. Discover what you can create with popular services free for 12 months. Learn more at azure.com. That's AZURE.com. And sign up for a free account to start building in the cloud today.
Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our Quick Publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Rival Recon here on Anfield Index Pro. I'm Harry Sethi. And with the transfer window winding to a close after an uninspiring summer, with key areas of the squad left unaddressed, it's time to once again focus solely on the football, with Arne looking back to make it 3 wins out of 3 as the Reds head to Old Trafford on Sunday afternoon. After last season's incredibly frustrating performances at Old Trafford, Reds fans will be hoping for a more decisive showing from their team this time round as Slot takes on his fellow Dutchman, Erik Ten Hag. And just a reminder to all of you listening to this on the free side of Anfield Index, this pod will cut off for the end as this discussion goes beyond 50 minutes. Should you wish to listen to the show in its entirety and without any ads, you can subscribe to Anfield Index Pro for the cost of one of those takeaway copies you grab each week. Joining me on the pod this week to discuss what kind of shape United find themselves in this season, how pre-season went, and the transfer window unfolded for the Red Devils, and whether they're any closer to a recognisable pattern of play under Ten Hag as he enters his 3rd season as United manager, I'm delighted to welcome back my good friend Carl Anka, Manchester United correspondent for The Athletic.
Well, welcome back, Carl Anka. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. How are you?
Good. I say we're at the end of it's a tiring week on my side. Not because I've been glued to the transfer window or anything like that, but just for various reasons. But we are also at the end of the transfer window, coming towards the end of it as well, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit. But we didn't have a chance to get you on for one of the Rivals shows where we were talking to the top 6. Well, again, I'm not going to make a joke about that, to the last season's top 6 and talk about what shape do we think our sides are in ahead of the season, what needs to be done, what are the big objectives, who's come in, who hasn't, etc. But given that we are at that stage where you come to the end of the window this evening, probably makes sense just to look back a little bit to the end of last season, and sort of a weird one in that the league finish, obviously 8th place, was the worst since 89-90 season, I believe. However, the season ends on that high note of the FA Cup win, with Ten Hag, almost, has he silenced his doubters? Has he done enough to show the green shoots and he should be entrusted? And then a lot of speculation, it seemed to be, in the weeks after that around, would there be other managers? Were there discussions going on? And then in the end, around June or late June or so, the decision was made that, the club would be sticking with Ten Hag. I've mentioned loads there, but I just wanted to ask you, I guess, at the end of that, at that point, actually, I'll ask you two questions. End of the season, after the FA Cup win, what was your view on the campaign? What needed, I guess, sort of the focus areas for the future? And then what was your view after that? Well, that speculation had ended, and it was clear that Erik Ten Hag would be remaining as Manchester United manager.
So, first of all, end of the season, I'm actually going to talk to you about the end of the Premier League season rather than the FA Cup. So, the interesting thing in the final two league games of last season, Ten Hag goes from the 4-2-3-1 and starts playing this 4. At the time, it looked like a 4-2-2-2, but now we've got a larger sample size. We now understand it's the 4-2-4 that we're seeing. So it was first used against Newcastle. So they get absolutely battered against Crystal Palace 4-0. This is the game where it looks as if Elise has retired Casemiro on the field. And there were some people around the club who, at halftime, that Crystal Palace result, just went, well, we knew we weren't going to get much from this result because of the amount of injuries. We knew this was going to be bad, so we're just going to take our lumps. And that was the general vibe of we're just going to take our lumps and just limp our way to what happened. And then what we understand was after the Crystal Palace result, 2 or 3 players stood up in the dressing room at Selhurst Park and went, boys, we've got a cup final against City soon. We can't do this. We cannot exist like this anymore. Ten Hag changed to the 4-2-4. They beat Newcastle, which was quite surprising. I didn't think they played too much better, but wasteful finishing from one team and good finishing from you, and you get the win. And then they played Brighton. Brighton, it was very much on the beach, the Zerbi's final game, whatnot. First half was non-entity. Second half, they get the goals. But even so, the week before the FA Cup final, I interviewed Menu, I interviewed Dallo, and they both talked about we know we can win, but also we know it's been a really hard season. And the general mood around Carrington and talking to people around the club, not perhaps the coaching staff, was this has been bad. This has been really, really bad, and something has to change for the season ahead. Now, typically, when the vibe is something has to change for the season ahead, the ownership goes, the thing that has to change is the manager, and that, whatever. And the final press conference before the FA Cup final had a pretty down tone. There were two or three sort of, okay, how do we approach this? Do we ask questions about next season? Do we ask questions about the future? Because there doesn't really seem to be that guarantee that you get from other. You knew Pep Guardiola was going to be the City manager next season. You did not know if Ten Hag was, and nor did you know if he would walk or if you knew he was going to be sacked. Manchester United do have history of sacking a manager shortly after winning the FA Cup final in Louis van Gaal, so that was all going on. So that press conference was weird, and then the day before, you had the reports in The Guardian going from a single source with knowledge of the situation, but it didn't seem to be from Manchester United Football Club, saying Ten Hag was going to be sacked regardless of the result. That was odd as well, and I always point out, The Guardian went early with that story, said that Ten Hag was going to be sacked, and everyone else there was no following that. There was no, we can confirm this. It was all, according to The Guardian, this is what's going to happen, which was a real, not to get too inside baseball, that was unusual. And the game itself was remarkable. That's the best I saw Manchester United play all of last season. I don't think anyone expected Manchester United to win that game. That's probably the best 15 minutes of defending I've seen Aaron Wan-Bissaka put together in a Manchester United shirt to stop Doku. And United win. And it was thrilling. It was amazing. I remember at halftime, I hugged Andy Mitten at halftime, and I just said, I don't know what's going to happen for the rest of this game, but while United is still winning, I'm just going to enjoy this moment with you, my friend. And then we had essentially 2 or 3 weeks sat there going, are United going to fire Ten Hag? And that was a very, very unusual thing, because the briefing, the messaging from Manchester United was they were going to go through a season-long review and go through all facets of the club. And yet, we know for a fact Manchester United talked to Marco Silva. We know for a fact they talked to Thomas Tuchel. We know for a fact they may have looked at Kieran McKenna before they eventually decided, well, Erik Ten Hag was on holiday in Ibiza, that Ten Hag was the man. So Ten Hag stayed. I was very, very grateful that a decision was made before the Euro started. And
That's a nice text to receive, Ibiza. Can you imagine you're just you're on the sunbed or something, sipping whatever it might be, and you get you're staying.
You're staying. By the way, you have to plan preseason now because you're going to be there. But yet, I mean, this is a very, very interesting thing. And Ten Hag is staying, and this is his third season in charge. And we're talking now, it's a Friday evening. The transfer window is going to close in about 5 hours or so. This is a football manager who has won 2 trophies in 2 seasons in charge of Manchester United. He's starting his 3rd season in charge. And yet, if I asked you, how does Erik Ten Hag's Manchester United team play? Could you give me a short answer?
No. I think it speaks volumes, right? I think
that is unusual for a Premier League manager who's been in charge for 3 seasons. That is very unusual for a Premier League manager who's won silverware in those seasons. He's been in charge for 2 seasons and who's won silverware. And I'm talking to you, I've just come out of Erik Ten Hag's press conference. This was at 1 o'clock today, so 4 hours ago. And one of the journalists there also said, they asked some questions over your style of play. And Ten Hag went, well, I don't want to answer those questions because you should just use your, Ten Hag's like, I don't need to get involved in that because you should know what my style of play is by now.
Yeah. So, and I remember chatting to you towards the end of last season, and there being questions around that, and I think people asking him to explain a little bit about his style of play, and he would describe stuff that you would then sort of think to yourself, I'm not seeing that. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm not seeing that, and I haven't seen that, and I do have eyes. I mean, you cover football for a living, and I'm watching this, and I'm not seeing what you're telling me I'm seeing. And it was a strange disconnect, right?
There was a really, really strange disconnect, and I think Ten Hag and I think those at Manchester United are going to apportion that disconnect to the huge amount of injuries that occurred last season. And the assumption, hope, game plan, however you want to call it, for this season is Manchester United will be better because we won't have the injury problems of last season. And I agree. And I've written 2 or 3 season previews saying Manchester United will be better than what they were last season, if only by default. I think so many things went wrong last season to create this imperfect storm that are unlikely to repeat themselves all in the same way, in the same combination. So United won't be the 8th place team that only managed to score 57 goals in the league, that had huge problems in defence, in midfield and up front. However, I don't know if that default improvement is enough to turn Manchester United from 8th place finishers to 3rd or 4th place.
Yeah, so if you were to take the injuries out of it for a second, because, unless there's something going horribly wrong with your strength and conditioning or the way in which players are training, you'd hope that that's a freak of nature and it doesn't repeat itself in that sense. I'm conscious I'm saying this whilst we've obviously had the recent news that Mason Mount's out for 4 to 5 weeks. But we'll just put that to the side, and injuries are not a factor here. At the end of that season, then Ten Hag's staying on as manager. What for you did you think? What were the priority areas that needed to be focused on? I'm not purely talking about positions here or reinforcements, but maybe it comes down to stuff like you mentioned, identity, a clear identity that people can see, and what the manager's saying translates to what you're seeing on the pitch. Or what would have been your focus?
I think so. It is a twofold thing. So one, we needed to get a great idea of what the style of football Ten Hag wanted to do and what exactly he was trying to do last season. Because last season, before a ball was kicked, before Man United play against Wolves, during the pre-season tour, he goes, we want to be the best transitional team in the world. And this was a question asked Ten Hag periodically throughout the season of, do you still want to be the best transitional team in the world? Even though you have all these injuries, is that still the ambition? Are there any other concerns about the fact that you are weak to defensive you're weak to counterattack despite pursuing this transitional style? And throughout the majority of the season, Ten Hag went, injuries are happening, but this is the goal. And we believe in this because this suits Manchester United historically. Attack. This is a football club that chants attack, 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 attack. This is a team that's had players like Beckham and Ronaldo and Giggs, and has always been about very, very speedy wingers just bombing down. And it seemed like Ten Hag wanted to tap into that. And also, this is a team that your in Ten Hag's first season, his best attacking player was Marcus Rashford, who's best when running in behind defences, running into space. And his captain is Bruno Fernandes, who just is chronically addicted to doing through balls. So it makes sense to just play really, really direct, really, really pacey football. And then right before the season ended, I asked Ten Hag, do you still want to do this next season? And then he tried to reverse ferret. He tried to say, my conversation about being the best transitional team was all about the attacking transition, not the defensive transition. To which, and you can look this up on YouTube. I'm in the press conference, and I go, sorry. To be clear, the entire season when you talked about transition, you meant only in the attack. And he goes, yeah, obviously defense is very, very important, but we meant in the attack. And I never quite bought that as an answer. I don't think the entire season we've been talking, I misinterpreted what he was saying, but he changed his mind. And I think what we've seen in these opening two games, he has relented a little bit in how many bodies are being committed forward and how quickly the team wants to play. However, I think what we've also seen is in the personnel he's looking to acquire this summer, he's not changing too much from what worked in 22-23. And so comes to the summer, Ten Hag's been confirmed. Question number one for me was, is Ten Hag, what style of football is Ten Hag going to do? And that was answered for me the moment we find out Manchester United are interested in Manuel Ugarte. That's me going, right, okay. You're going to do a similar game plan to what's worked in the previous two seasons, but instead of Casemiro being in there, it's going to be a player like Ugarte to give you the pressing and the counter-pressing. You go, fine. And then question two is, can Manchester United's executive team, the player trading team, supply Ten Hag with enough football players who can carry out the style of football? Because as we've seen in the last two seasons, there are a lot is asked from about 5 players in that squad to do the football Ten Hag wants. If Lisandro Martinez is not in that football team, the ball progression from deep craters. If Luke Shaw is not at left back, ball progression between the boxes craters. If Casemiro is not fit or to his 2022 level, then they become a sieve when defending against counterattacks. So if Diogo Dalot doesn't play at right back, then it becomes very, very easy for opposition teams to just funnel the ball into difficult areas, and United can't progress the ball. And this summer, most of those problems have been solved. So if Lisandro Martinez is in the team, the person who can now progress the ball from deep is Matthijs de Ligt. Hopefully, in theory, we should see more soon. If Diogo Dalot cannot play right back, the person who can help progress the ball down the right-hand side will be Nazir Mazraoui. If Casemiro cannot offer the pressing and counter-pressing in defensive midfield, the person who can offer some of that is Manuel Ugarte. There are still questions about up front, although I am intrigued by Joshua Zirkzee and what that can offer. But the big sort of, well, how do you plan to do that if you don't have that person fit? Ten Hag is solved by either buying someone or having someone come back into the squad, either back from loan or having something else. So the team is in a better place from last season, again, if only by default. But there are some concerns in there, and we're talking right now before Sunday's game, and I think this is a squad that has the potential to finish 4th, but could easily have a skid and end up finishing 5th.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
I don't need a VPN. I've got nothing to hide. Ha. This is what I used to tell myself before I hooked up with LibertyShield.com. Not only is my home internet now fully encrypted, but I can now access all the websites I want, whenever I want, and do so from absolutely anywhere. As a Liverpool fan, I love to know I can now watch every match, regardless of whether it's on UK TV or not. My Liberty Shield VPN makes sure nothing is blocked and guarantees me super fast streaming speed throughout that match. You can get connected right now with their software package, which includes a 48-hour no-obligation free trial and instant access to their apps for Apple, Android, Fire TV, PC, Mac, and Android TV. Or go a step further like I have and get one of their pre-configured VPN routers. These small but powerful devices allow you to easily connect every device in your home to VPN, making it the perfect solution for smart TVs, Mac boxes, and games consoles. Visit libertyshield.com today and use coupon code AIVPN25 to get 25% off at checkout.
And you mentioned some of the new names there, Matthijs de Ligt, Joshua Zirkzee, Mazraoui, coming and buying as well. Lenny Yoro coming in as I think, Liverpool fans will be familiar with him as well. There's definitely interest from Liverpool. It's one of those sort of like transfers where Man United fans can genuinely, actually claim to have had a coup, I think, over Liverpool in terms of sort of securing that guy's services, super talent. I think all the numbers point to that. Again, unfortunately, he's currently out. Just make sure I'm right. Ugarte is that over the line yet, or is that?
So Ugarte has not been announced right now. We're talking sort of 5 hours before the window shuts, but he will be a Manchester United player.
He will be. Okay.
He's not been registered in time, so he will not feature on Sunday. Much like I think Slot said Chiesa hasn't been registered in time either, so he won't feature.
Oh yeah, that was a weird one. I'm not sure whether or not it's about the registering or if he was just saying that fitness-wise, why would we do that? Like, I mean, I've seen the guy doing the 1 a.m. training sessions or whatever it might be, and I'm sure he's keen to get going. But yeah, given the guy's record, I would hope they're gonna treat him with the kid gloves for a while. But Ugarte, okay, so yeah, we'll have to wait to see him in the Manchester United shirt and also see him buzzing around in midfield in the Premier League, given sort of how he's tended to play. But in terms of transfers, you said you're largely happy with the business that the club has done.
Largely, it fits a framework and a game model is now the catchphrase for football managers now and coaches. Oh, it all got to fit in this game model. Ten Hag started using his first press conference of we got this game model and whatnot, and I said you didn't use this term whatsoever last season, and now you're using it multiple times in this press conference. So something's happened behind the scenes for you to now pick up on this phrase.
How can you challenge your game model? Is it on a tablet? Is it in a dossier? Laminated? You carry it around with you?
Well, all the signings make sense within a game model, and this is my job. It is my job to understand what Erik Ten Hag wants to do. And all of these signings tick certain boxes. Right, okay, you want ball progression from deep. That means De Ligt comes in, he's very good with the ball, his feet can pass. He's very combative in the air. And while he can have some troubles if he gets turned, he can win the majority of his duels. Makes sense, tick. Mazraoui comes in for Aaron Wan-Bissaka. You've improved your ball progression on the right-hand side. You've got more variation on your ball progression on the right-hand side because while Wan-Bissaka can progress the ball via 1-2s. He's not the crosser Mazraoui is. He's also not the underlapping right back that Mazraoui is. Tick. So those problems solved. Yoro, huge amounts of recovery pace. So sort of you're getting Rafael Varane before he goes over to Real Madrid. This makes sense as well. So now, in theory, you can play with a higher line. And the good thing about Yoro is, and the good thing about the other defenders that United have signed is, Yoro doesn't have to be good from day one, which has been complicated from the injury. Great. Tick, makes sense. Ugarte is the one where I've raised my eyebrows. And this one, I admit, I stopped being concerned about it when people who have watched him a lot more than I have said, stop watching the games for PSG and start watching the games. That's for Uruguay and Sporting Lisbon. So, okay. He had an okay first season at PSG. He was initially signed to be the João Palhinha replacement at Sporting Lisbon, Sporting Club de Portugal, however you want to say. When Palhinha, essentially, towards the end of his time in Portugal, just stopped tackling as much because he didn't get the benefit of doubt from the referees anymore. And he said this in press conferences. Ugarte comes in, knows how to do that stuff without getting booked, and does swimmingly to the point where PSG want him. the PSG director of football doesn't necessarily see eye to eye with Luis Enrique at the time. And Luis Enrique, I mean, you've played Luis Enrique teams before. You know what Luis Enrique wants from his deepest line midfielder. He wants someone who can receive the ball and pass the ball under pressure and do loads of one-touch passing.
Not Ugarte.
Not Ugarte. Ugarte is, I think, with a fair wind.
Monster.
Yeah, I think with a fair wind and a good bit of momentum, Ugarte could be a Gattuso-style figure. That means you need to get your Pirlo-style figure or your Marquisio or whoever you want to do.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say Marquisio. Marquisio didn't play for AC Milan. You need a Pirlo or a Kaka next to him. At this point in time, I don't think United have that. Because I don't know what football player Maine is going to be when he's 24 years of age. So the Ugarte one is a huge puzzle piece for United this season, and he's also that puzzle piece where the moment you put him down, you understand the wider picture of what Ten Hag is trying to go for. And when Ugarte got linked and we saw there was some smoke to the fire, I went, right. The really important thing for Ten Hag this season is he needs more and more players who can win 70 to 80% of their duels week in, week out. There can be no missed tackles in this team. There can be no missed tackles, and your wide players in particular have to be very, very confident, very, very athletic, and you just have to either hook, by crook, by nutmeg, be their fullbacks more than 50% of the time. And that is a way to play football.
Yeah.
That is certainly a way to play football. I think it requires you to have a number of superstars or geniuses. Perhaps genius is a harsh term. You need a lot of football players with high football intelligence. You need a lot of football players who are comfortable with 2 feet. A lot of football players who don't panic when they're pressed. A lot of football players who are able to sense a pressing trap and be able to evade it, and also who are able to avoid that. And once Ugarte comes in, that also retroactively makes some of these other signings make more sense. In that Ugarte's coming in and we're now it makes more sense why you signed Mason Mount. Because Mason Mount, perhaps why he doesn't necessarily have the positional, there's no natural position for him to play in this strongest 11. He does have a number of attributes Ten Hag likes. Very, very good football intelligence. Very, very good playing on the half turn. He's got acute awareness of, I'm about to walk into a pressing trap now. I'm not going to walk into it and do something else. And similarly, he's very good at, I'm just going to hide here while the striker is receiving the ball and pick his pocket. So while Mark doesn't necessarily have a position as starting 11, I understand why Ten Hag likes that player. So the signings all make sense on paper. And I'd say of the 5 signings, Ugarte including that, of those 5 signings, 3 of them excite me more than the other 2. De Ligt is an interesting one, and I think De Ligt will eventually take over, maybe. But also that internal competition with him and Yoro, it makes me happy and sad, and I want to see both of them loads, and I probably won't.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. And Ugarte, I think for those listening and watching him, I think they'll be very familiar. Again, it's another in this relentless pursuit for a 6 that Liverpool are on, this quest so we can rest at 1. Yeah, there will be a point in time where we can rest. Ugarte has come up plenty of times, and it's been interesting. We did a show where we're looking at the options in that role right at the start of the transfer window. Like, remember, that was a point in time where Edison's stock was particularly high, right? You know, coming off the Atalanta win in the Europa League final, and looking at the strengths and who's more of a destroyer, who has more of a history of actually being able to actually progress the ball forward. And the one thing that came up with Ugarte was just the sheer number of duels.
Yep.
Even in the teams with dominated possessions, he was somehow managing to find a way to.
He loves to hunt. He loves to hunt. When you did your search, did Stach come up, the German midfielder from Hoffenheim?
No, Stach did not come up. No,
Stach was one that came up in my search, and again, this is transfer deadline day, so you just start hearing names being thrown about everywhere. On the Twitter feeds, I've seen Stach being linked to Liverpool, and he's one I'm going, ooh, he'd fit very well at Liverpool.
Yeah. the ones that came up, I think, was the likes of Alan Varela, the likes of Edison. I think at that point, just because his stock was so high. Ugarte was lower down the list. Trying to think who else.
Who
might no, he wasn't in. Yeah, he wasn't in it. I think.
I'm surprised that Juventus got pretty much a free run to get him.
Yeah, I think it's become clearer as well. I think for Arne Slot's approach and sort of what's required in that role. I mean, years ago I would have loved a Ugarte type in that role under Jurgen, and it would have made a lot of sense. But I think that's now going to be slightly different, and so it'll be interesting to see. I'm sure we'll talk about it at one point, how Gravenberch applies himself in that role, really, because that could be his career. I mean, it could be, if you want to be in Liverpool's first team, this is a way for you to be in Liverpool's first team. You're going to get coached through it to begin with by Alexis McAllister pointing to sort of where you need to be in transition. But he's got a lot of the tools that you might need to, well, certainly on receiving the ball, turning, finding angles. But we'll come back to that in a second. I want to talk about pre-season.
Yeah.
Pre-season's tough. You can't. I think Ten Hag was at pains to sort of say that this team's not ready when it came to the end of pre-season. Whether it be players coming back into the squad, him not having everybody he needed together. As you say, the style of the team he's building, it sort of needs all these pieces to be there for it to make more sense. And the more pieces that are there, the puzzle's complete. What did you make of pre-season? Did you see any of what you're hoping to see this season in those games, or was it just perhaps a bit too much of a haphazard schedule for you to really take too much from it? I know it was a bit of a tougher pre-season campaign.
Yeah, Ten Hag was at pains to stress that pre-season was hard because the United squad was essentially bisected due to Copa America and Euro 2024 due to the time difference. I didn't get to watch all the games live, which Ten Hag also joked about. When in his first press conference where someone asked him how the preseason games go, and he just went, "What? You didn't watch them?" And like, well, no, the time difference. Like, oh, okay, wow. Anyway, here's what we did in preseason as well. And in that first press conference, so this is the pre-Community Shield press conference, I asked Ten Hag about rest defense, and I sort of harkened back to a question I gave him in the spring. I said, in the spring after a game against Fulham, you said, I think our rest defense could be better. How do you want to improve that this season? And his answer was a pause, and then saying, when I said that, I think maybe I was talking more about just that Fulham game in particular, but also here's why rest defense is important. Interesting. And throughout that answer, I gave him a follow-up question and said, it sounds like everything you said to me in this press conference, this team might take a while to come together because you had so many players at Copa America, you had so many players in Germany, you've had some players in the United States with you on tour, but you also had players like Xerxes and others who have been at Carrington. And he said, I can see why you might think that way. Teams, this is a problem not just for us, but for teams that have had numerous internationals away, that it might take a while to coalesce, and maybe the league table will look different, but we'll come together. And I think that's not an excuse, and that's not laying the groundwork for an excuse, but that makes sense to me. I'm a man who enjoys XG and XGA and XGOT and PPDA, and I know I'm not going to open those things up in my analysis until match day 10, match day 11, because sample size. And at this point in time, the big thing I'm looking for is who looks fit. Who looks fit? Are your wide players taking on their fullbacks? Are your fullbacks overlapping? Are they underlapping? Are your midfield players talking to each other? Are your centre-backs talking to each other as well? That's the main thing I'm looking for right now. And the opening 2 games of the season, growth, shoots of growth, many of them Mason Mount based, which it pains me a little bit because now he's injured. And the big one was, I woke up one day during pre-season and I found about Liverpool 1-3-0. To which I had a number of US Manchester United fans saying, don't worry about it, United actually played well in the first half. And okay, fair enough. We'll take it from there.
Hey guys, it's Eddie Gibbs from Anfield Index here. I hope you're enjoying this podcast, and I'm sorry to call time on the show before it ends. In the current climate, it's tougher than ever before to offer podcasts for free. At Anfield Index, we produce over 75 free shows every month, which I'm confident is unparalleled in the LFC sphere. Whilst we'd love to offer everything for free, the production costs now make this impossible. That said, we don't want to follow the model of other channels and lock all of our content behind a paywall. So what we've decided to do is to continue offering every show for free, but cut that offering to 30 minutes on our longer shows. So to get all of our shows in full and enjoy the best of everything we have to offer, we really hope you'll consider supporting the channel and signing up at AnfieldIndexPro.com. For about the price of 1 cup of coffee, you'll get every podcast in full with 0 ads. You'll also get access to our LFC VIP community, where you can enjoy live podcasts, engage with our podcasters, and chat with other Reds in real time. So that website again, AnfieldIndexPro.com. Join today.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.